We came to this topic knowing nothing about it, for one. I had not looked into corporate taxes throughout my life. And our executive producer, Charles Davidson, he had been following the issue with a passion and was very interested in how offshore tax havens affected the global economy. So he approached Vicki and asked her to write a book, and then she said, well, let's do a film. We can do that much more quickly and reach more people, perhaps. And so he said, okay, I've never done a film before, so he said, go ahead. And that's how we started.
So Lee, let me put a question to you. What does it mean to have a film like this that that brings all these disparate elements together?
Mean in what way? To me or to?
Yeah, to you.
Well, it's fascinating for us because I work for a publication that talks to policymakers and talks to tax professionals, but it does not talk to ordinary people most of the time. So it's nice to be able to, relate this all. And it was actually a dream of our founder 30, 40 almost years ago, 1972, to be able to communicate with ordinary people. And actually, he was very exercised when he founded the thing that oil companies weren't paying taxes, but they were just sort of the tip of a large iceberg. But it was always his dream to be able to communicate this to ordinary people, but it is hard. I mean, what this film does is it really boils down a lot of difficult concepts into nice graphics and, nice shooting and, an understandable, interesting format.
Gentlemen, let me put the same question to the two of you. Where do you think this issue is at in an election year? Is it going to make the radar of this election or not?
Well, it's interesting. We've just a month ago, Obama announced that he was seeking more corporate tax cuts, and we've had the Republicans, of course, proposing the zero cuts that we saw discussed in the film. 2 weeks after Obama announced his plan, the UK decided to announce another corporate tax cut, and Japan just announced a tax cut that was substantial. So this is turning into kind of a global arms race, and it doesn't really benefit anyone because we're headed toward this end state where the state basically has to rely on taxes on labor and taxes on sales and unavoidable taxes, and the corporate elite and the shareholders are able to avoid these taxes using offshore devices and lots of other devices. That's not the kind of society we really want to end up with. So I'm happy that this film has been made because it's hard to talk about taxes. You'd rather watch paint dry. People's eyes glaze over. And it was the incredible connection that we made with the U.S. Uncut people that allows this issue, which is really fundamental to the future of our democracy and the battle for the state, for the government that's now going on. And people who see the film, I think, their eyes are opening up and they're seeing this is not just boring, it's really central to the issue.
I'm not really sure if this is an issue that's ready to take off in terms of the general public being aware of it or being part of the campaign, but I do think, the parallel to the Occupy Wall Street movement, to me, is extremely interesting. I mean, James actually summed this up very well near the end of the film. I mean, I think probably a lot of people in this room are like me and fairly cynical about the ability of the public to be able to affect the political debate. And, as someone who's written a little, not a lot, but a little over the years about income inequality, this was an issue that until 6 or 8 months ago, you were hard pressed to read much about that issue outside of, the pages of Pravda, maybe, right? And what the Occupy Wall Street movement has shown is that, when lots of people take to the streets for long periods of time, it really can make a difference. And, it's not clear to me what's going to happen 6 months from now in terms of actual policy around income inequality, but it is part of the debate now every single day in a way that it's not just that it wasn't this much of a part of the debate before, it wasn't part of the debate at all, and now it's a huge part of the debate. So, it is an interesting lesson that shows that if there is some, I think, kind of popular awareness of some of these issues, and there is some actual, mass protest, that there actually could be a chance that it could be part of some actual policy discussions.
Let's go to the audience for some questions. Yes, hand up there.
ACT is having its 25th anniversary in a couple of weeks, and they're having direct action with Wall Street around the transaction tax. Could you talk a little bit, I didn't hear it in the film, but could you talk a little bit about what that is, and is that a way to go?
One, there are little financial transaction taxes around the world. Oddly enough, some of them are in the countries that are regarded as very friendly to securities trading, like Britain, like Singapore, like Hong Kong. And what it is it's a teensy-weensy tax every time somebody trades a security. And it is collected at the clearinghouse level. I'm completely for it. I've written articles advocating it. I'm going to advocate it some more. But yeah, it collects. It's a very efficient way to collect revenue, because you just clip it off at the clearinghouse when you do the transaction. But the other thing is, it would, without getting into hairy detail here, it would discourage a lot of disturbing practices that are going on in the securities markets, like high frequency trading, because it basically raises the cost of trading by a little bit. But it's a thing that you can adopt it pretty quickly, and we even have one here. We have a little teeny weeny one that funds the SEC. So it's something that's a very doable thing, and for revenue and for reasons of fixing some things that are going on in the financial markets that are not productive, it's a very good idea. Does it take care of deficit type problems? Can you pay for occupying Afghanistan or something with it? No, not unless you go higher on it, but you can get quite a bit of money on it. But if you want to take care of the deficit right now, you repeal the Bush tax cuts. I mean, a lot of the deficit is attributable to that.
One word about that's the so-called Tobin tax, and I'm not going to regale you with a lecture on financial economics, but basically it's known as the Robin Hood tax. And the people that are opposed to it are the big banks, and the top 6 banks in the United States control about 85% of international currency markets, including those in the UK and abroad. And so when Europe started talking about introducing this thing, it's a perfect example of the politics of this. Geithner, who's the Secretary of the Treasury, Obama's Secretary of the Treasury, flew all around Europe lobbying against this tax. And the worst thing in the world would be to have one country or 2 countries, or the Europeans go off on their own and try to adopt this tax alone. The United States is the big market. So it's very important for us to get on the notion of, there are a lot of things we could do with the tax system that require global cooperation. But these corporations are the only ones that are really effectively organized across borders. And that's what one issue that we have to address.
I was just going to sort of echo one thing that Lee said. I mean, there's a lot of very complicated things that probably need to be done, but then there are simple things like letting the Bush tax cuts expire, which would obviously raise a lot of revenue. And I think one thing, just what James said that echo this, one of the really difficult things in this area is it's an area that's of tremendous public interest. But if you look at a lot of other public interest areas like the environment or poverty or reproductive rights, there are, with kind of varying degrees of funding, fairly well organized public interest groups and lobbies in Washington and around the country that are on the public interest side of those issues. There's virtually no funded public interest lobby in Washington on tax equity issues. Rebecca Wilkins from Citizens for Tax Justice is in the film. Bob McIntyre runs that organization and has been doing kind of God's work for 30 years, but it's a tiny organization with virtually no funding. There isn't really an organized lobby on the other side of transfer pricing.
And the final thing is the film is going to be taking we're going to be having a 12-city tour this summer. There's organizations called Progressive Congress, which has partnered up with the film to help get it out across the country in lots of different cities. So if you go to our website, we'renotbrokemovie.com, you can sign up for more information or tell people about it if it's coming to their area, if you want to tell anyone. So thank you.